For this lesson, I'm going to show you guys some digital painting basics, and for this I'm going to be using a pen tablet. These are available at most big box stores. I know Best Buy sells a $100 version called the Bamboo, which is by Wacom, which is what I'm going to be using today. This is something is typically associated with more for people who do a lot of hand-drawn elements in their work, but it does come into use. I know a lot of designers who don't do a lot of drawing who love it for turning their concept sketches into line art. So it is worth the investment, definitely. What the difference between a pen tablet and a mouse is that you are, well, you're using something that's more akin to a pen, so it's a little bit easier to use. But also, other than just kind of giving you a location on the screen, depending on how hard you're pressing, you also get varying amounts of pressure, which can come into play in many different ways. It could change the width of a stroke, it could change the opacity of a stroke, both of which I'll be demonstrating in a moment here. So here we have a painting by Picasso, and basically if you open up, if you're using a image as a reference, I'm going to be recreating just half this image, so I'm going to show you how to kind of place a quick guide. If you double click on the background, which is currently locked, and just hit OK, it'll unlock it. If you hold down Control and click on the layer, it will select it. And then on the ruler, which you can, if it's not visible, just hit Control or Command R. You can just click and drag over, and it should snap right to the middle based on the selection you have. So I am going to create a new layer here. The first method I'm going to show you is kind of is a little bit easier to use if you are not using, helps if you're not using a Wacom tablet or a pen tablet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by using the basic lasso tool to kind of get an idea, a basic area that I want to color, which is close. So I'm going to, with that selection, switch over to quick mask mode, which is right down here. If I click on that, you can see that it makes my selection normal and everything else is turned red. And you can also see that the colors have switched to white and black. So if I paint with white, that adds to my selection. And my brush is now, let me make a fix there. And if I paint with black, it will subtract. So I want black, so I'm going to either hit X, or I can hit this button here to switch the foreground and background color. And I'm just going to paint in the area that I want, and then I'm going to, with white selected, I'm going to get rid of some of this other. So now when I exit quick mask mode, you can see I have made a much better selection. So I'm going to click on the paint bucket tool, and I'm going to hold down Alt, which will change it into a eyedropper. Click anywhere on there to get a color, and then let go, and it goes back to the paint bucket, and click, and it will fill that area with that color. So as you can see, I've made my first choice. This is really good for obviously painters like Picasso that have a lot of hard edges. We're gonna switch over to Picasso, which obviously he doesn't have a lot of hard edges, so we're gonna have to kind of look at what other brushes we have. So switch to the paintbrush tool, and then drop down this menu, and I just have the default brushes selected, seeing as that's what most of you will have. Since Picasso has while he doesn't have a lot of hard edges, his brush strokes are very well defined and they don't really blend into one another. I'm just going to choose this one right here, which, as you can see, since I have a pen tablet installed, it's changing my thumbnail strokes for my brushes. You can see that with the varying amounts of pressure, it will change the size of the brush. So I'm going to, with that selected, I'm just going to start, and I can do this by holding down the Alt button when I have the paintbrush tool selected, and it will change back and forth to the eyedropper. So I'm just going to start selecting colors and just start painting them in. Now, as you can see, it's a little bit sharp. So I'm just, which isn't really similar to the way he does it. So I'm just going to switch back to this, oops, default brush, and I'm just going to, oops, and I made a huge mistake here. See, I painted on the background, which is a big no-no. So I'm going to make a new layer, because if I do that, then there's no way of going back. So I'm going to, let's just pick one of these characters here. Let's work on her. So I am going to, oops, with the paintbrush tool, and this is still too big, and I'm just going to start painting in these shapes. This is a little better, but it's still not grabbing the kind of color that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on the brush, and then I'm going to open up my brush panel. So here, what I want is I don't want it to get so thin down at the ends. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to adjust diameter here. You can do these with any brushes, and I'm not really going to take the time to kind of go through every single function in this lesson. So just keep your brush window open, and you can start to make changes by selecting any of these different areas and tweaking the settings, and just kind of look at what the result is in the brush preview. So now that I have that, I don't need the brush palette anymore. And I'm going to, the problem with Picasso is his brush strokes are so, there's so many of them, and that would obviously take you forever to do on your own. So I'm just going to kind of limit myself to not going past a specific brush size. Let's get my guide into place here. So let's, I'm going to tell myself that I'm not going to go below 20. All right. So now I'm just going to start going in here. And painting. And that's still not quite where I want it to be. So I'm going to go to the brush that I was using before, which I liked, but I liked that I was getting a little bit harder edges. So I'm going to kind of work to combine the two. So what I want is I want the edges to taper just a little bit. So I'm going to go back to Shape Dynamics and enable that, and now you can see that I can change how it tapers. So now my pen pressure will affect both opacity and stroke. So see, now that's close, but it's still a little bit hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down the opacity of the brush a little bit. So now it's not going to be perfectly it's not going to have those hard edges that it did before. So that's a little bit more what I was hoping for. And then even though I have the opacity turned down, I can reduce it. I'm sorry, I can just paint over the same spot several times and still get a harder result. You gotta just take the time to make sure you're getting the brush stroke colors that you want. So yeah, as I said, Van Gogh is a bit of a challenge compared to something like Picasso, as you can see. So the next person that I'm going to look at is Vermeer, who has a very well blended style. So what I'm going to do is I want to just go back to this brush because it's just what I'm comfortable with. And again, this is a place where using a tablet is going to be of a lot of help because, like I said, these areas are very well blended, so I'm just holding down, keeping my finger on the Alt button, so I can just keep going back there. And I'm just slowly making my way down. And again, I know I'm going a little bit fast, but for the sake of time. And in the example with Van Gogh and with Vermeer, you know, I'm not using multiple layers. You probably want to make a new layer every once in a while, just so that if you need to go back, you can. But you're not going to need as many layers as something like Picasso, where you have a bunch of different. Oh. But as you can see, it's coming along. But those are a few techniques that you can use to get started with digital painting. Again, I would strongly recommend, if digital painting is something that you want to, painting or coloring is something that you want to invest a lot of time in, then using a tablet will save you a lot of trouble.